This is CBC Here and Now.
We take a closer look at the Labrador West housing crisis and what is being done to fix it.
It is my home. I came here when I was 20 years old, and I'll be 80 years old next month, and now I had to leave.
I'll have that coming up on Here and Now.
The race for the NDP nomination for St. John's East is on.
You know, somebody needs to be the voice of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
After Mary Shortle, a second well-known community member, has put his name forward.
I believe that a time has come that we should change the landscape.
I'll have the details coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening, I'm Anthony Germain with a half-hour edition of Here and Now. Those stories we'll have for you just ahead. But first, Alberta is changing the way that it treats people with COVID-19. People who get the disease will no longer have to isolate, and contacts will no longer be notified, and people with symptoms won't get tested anymore. And this comes just as Newfoundland and Labrador is looking at moving up its own reopening dates. Here Now's Peter Cowan has more.
Alberta has been one of the most aggressive provinces in loosening restrictions. Masks aren't mandatory, and starting next month, they won't force people with COVID to isolate, and they won't track down all the contacts. It's similar to the way we treat the flu.
We did not employ those public health measures to manage cases. We employed them to reduce the chances that our healthcare system would be overwhelmed.
Fully vaccinated Albertans are allowed to travel to Newfoundland and Labrador without testing and isolation. So what does this do to the plan to reopen here? Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says she's not surprised other places are making this move. As more people get vaccinated, the risk goes down. Newfoundland and Labrador isn't ready to make a similar move yet, but it is coming.
We're looking for a little higher vaccination rate, but definitely those conversations have to happen and that transition has to happen. You know, there is going to come a point when we have to deal with COVID as it comes.
Since the province opened to travelers, there have been almost no cases of COVID-19, a pleasant surprise to health officials. One of the big reasons, most people traveling here have both vaccinations. That
speaks to who is traveling, which for the most part, I think are family members who are coming home to visit, who haven't been able to come home for quite some time, or people leaving and going to visit family and coming back. And I think, you know, they realize that they don't want to be putting their families and communities at risk. And so they're waiting until they're fully vaccinated to travel here, which I think is, you know, I think that's really wonderful.
In Newfoundland and Labrador, vaccination rates have been higher than expected and the cases lower than expected, which has public health officials reviewing the timelines to loosen restrictions.
You know, we didn't anticipate being able to get people vaccinated as quickly as we have, which is wonderful. I'm really happy to be able to say that. And as well to, you know, we did have concerns about the number of cases that we would see as we reopened.
We're going to get an update on the timeline for that reopening plan tomorrow at a briefing from Dr. Fitzgerald. Sources tell me that the mandatory mask requirement for public indoor spaces is going to be dropped on August 9th. This is because more than 50% of the eligible population is now fully vaccinated. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
The Canadian Taxpayers Federation says Ottawa's bailout of the Muskrat Falls project should prompt a reckoning over the province's poor finances. The Prime Minister and Premier announced a $5.2 billion deal yesterday to keep electricity rates low as the province begins to pay for the costs of building Muskrat Falls. The Taxpayers Federation says our province has the highest per-person program spending among all the provinces, and that Ottawa's decision means all Canadian taxpayers are now responsible for, quote, the bad decisions made by big spending politicians in Newfoundland and Labrador. Meanwhile, the Nunavut Inuit say yesterday's deal was substantive but lacked consideration of Indigenous reconciliation. The group says in a statement that it wants to have meetings with the provincial and federal governments over possible mitigation measures for Nunavut Inuit. Well, the federal election hasn't yet been called, but there's already a race in this province which could be well worth watching. Who is going to get the nomination to replace the NDP's Jack Harris? Now, the NDP has a rule for who can replace an incumbent who's not running again. Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm explains.
The riding of St. John's East has been a stronghold of Jack Harris and the NDP. Now that Harris won't seek re-election, the NDP will choose a new candidate. Earlier today, Syed Pirzada, president of the Provincial Muslim Association and local dermatologist, announced he is seeking the NDP nomination.
Newfoundland has reached a tipping point, where I think, tolerance and acceptance of anybody people of color, indigenous people. I think it should be the priority. And I think, I believe that, if I'm given the chance, I would highlight, these issues more, on the public, forums. And I've been doing it.
About 2 weeks ago, Mary Shortall, president of the NL Federation of Labour, had announced she's running for the NDP candidacy. According to NDP equity guidelines, a district held by the NDP whose incumbent isn't seeking re-election can only nominate candidates from a minority group, such as women, BIPOC, or people with disabilities.
This party is the party where equity-seeking groups are interested in running because it's the values that the party represents, and I think that's really important, especially now in a where we're hearing so much about discrimination and racism and Islamophobia and sexism and all kinds of hatred.
The riding of St. John's East on the Avalon Peninsula includes several big communities and stretches from Pooch Cove in the north to Kemmon Road in St. John's in the south and Bell Island in the west.
Muslim community in Newfoundland, it is actually one of the second biggest minority in Newfoundland. So for them to have their representative, I think it's a privilege.
We have seven Liberal MPs in Newfoundland and Labrador. Somebody needs to be the voice of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and for the people in St. John's East to hold government accountable.
Pirsada and Shortall will both meet with the nomination committee tonight. At that meeting, they will discuss the date of the vote that will decide who will follow Jack Harris as the candidate for St. John's East. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
The iron ore industry in Labrador West is booming once again, and that is causing a housing crunch in the region. Rents are increasing, some by hundreds of dollars a month, and vacancy rates are low. Here Now's Daryl Din brings us that story.
Iron ore prices are at an all-time high. Labrador West is booming, but it's also in the midst of a housing crisis. It's gotten so bad, some people are quitting good-paying jobs and moving away. Carly Lewis has been looking for months, as she is pregnant and wants a bigger home for her family. Her parents were two of the people who had to move.
They end up having to quit their job at IOC in Decorah, and now they're working at Boise's, but they're flying in and out from my hometown in Newfoundland. Now me and my boyfriend's actually looking for a place because they were taking care of my dog because at our apartment they don't allow dogs, which is another thing that's very hard here, trying to get a place with animals. A lot of places don't allow it. Since they've moved, they had to take my dog with them.
The boom in mining activity has brought more people to the region. The vacancy rate is low and rents are on the rise, in some cases by more than $500 a month. Some companies bought up apartment buildings just to use for their employees, taking units out of the market altogether. Seniors who've retired in Western Labrador are also feeling the squeeze. Labrador West Pioneer Living Inc. is trying to build affordable housing for seniors.
Our group was formed back in 2019 with the intention of building cottages for seniors in Labrador City. At present, we have no such accommodations.
The town of Labrador City has donated a piece of land for the cottages, but it needs to be serviced. If they get funding, it will take at least 2 years. The group says cottages can do two things: provide affordable housing for seniors, while also allowing for more housing turnover for those looking for homes. But for one of the group's board members, it may be too late. He's already looking at moving away.
It is my home. I came here when I was 20 years old, and I'll be 80 years old next month. And now I had to leave. That's very hard, and it's not right.
Board member Jim Dobbin has felt the effects.
My parents just moved last year, which is a big loss to me personally.
Part of the issue is that Newfoundland and Labrador doesn't have any rental control.
I think we should start to lobby the government to get that started here so we can be in a position to have some protection for seniors.
Labrador West MHA Jordan Brown says people here have pushed the provincial government for rental control before, and it didn't get anywhere.
We did ask for it, actually. In the heyday of the last boom, the town of Labrador City and Wabash both went to government asking for some sort of rental protections, and they were turned down. And if you look at Plan Big and a bunch of other reports that were done at the time in this region about the housing crisis, the last time we had one, both these reports did say we should have a rental protection system in this province.
The government says it's examined rent control, but it's not a desired policy option. The government believes rent control can discourage investors in developing more rental properties. It says rent control interrupts the free market process and may negatively impact supply and demand. With rent control not on the table as a solution for Labrador West's booming rental market, what is?
As for solutions right now, there's nothing immediate, but we have seen some solutions. We've seen the 10 units committed by Newfoundland and Labrador Housing to get repaired for low-income people. That will add some ease to the situation, but other than that, it's going to be more of a long-term plan right now.
In the meantime, it means many people here are still scrambling to find places to live, and those who already have spots are hoping their rents don't go up anymore.
Carly's dog Fido is back in town. Her brother's taking care of him. Unfortunately, the house he's renting is up for sale, so how long Fido stays is unknown. Daryl Din, CBC News, Labrador City.
Have another story about some difficulties in our healthcare system now. We're at the Eastgate Plaza with Dr. Caro OKeefe, a pharmacist here. So why don't you tell us the story about this patient you had recently?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a great story, just highlighting some of the inefficiencies in our healthcare system. Recently on Bell Island, we had a patient who had recently been discharged from the hospital and is taking a medication to prevent him from having a stroke, given some of the medical conditions that he has. It's a very expensive medicine.
It's a blood thinner?
It is a blood thinner, yes. So it's a blood thinner just to prevent him from having a stroke. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, a lot of our patients have their medications covered through the prescription drug program. And a part of the process for getting that medication covered is having annual blood work to ensure that a patient's kidney function is appropriate for the drug that they're taking and for that dose.
Right.
Because your kidney function is a very important role in a lot of the drugs that we take. So this patient was recently discharged from the hospital, and I was looking at his blood work and noticed that his kidney function had dropped a little bit when he was in the hospital, which can happen to a lot of patients if they get dehydrated, if they have an infection. It's something that we deal with, and oftentimes it comes back up, but it hadn't been reassessed since he'd gotten out of the hospital. And when I was looking at his blood work, I noticed that his most recent blood work actually reflected that this medicine wasn't appropriate for him at all, and it needed to be reassessed. So I tried to contact his family physician, who would normally be the person who would send in any blood work requisitions or any special authorization for medicines, and she was unfortunately on holidays. So the authorization for this person's medicine ran out, and we didn't have any blood work, and we didn't have anyone who could order blood work. So unfortunately, the patient ended up having to go to our emergency room on Bell Island to see a physician who was not familiar with him or his history. And if I had have been able to order that blood work, it would have been a lot more streamlined. So it actually ended up that he had to go to 2 different family physicians' offices in St. John's and visit our emergency room on Bell Island 3 different times to see 3 different physicians just to get this sorted out. And unfortunately, he actually went 3 weeks without his medicine because there was no one who could assess his blood work or get his special authorizations form filled out. And as his pharmacist, that's something that I would have been able to do very quickly, so probably in about 10 minutes. So
just so I'm clear on this, so you've got this guy, you know what's wrong, you know what he needs, so why can't you just say, hey, here you go?
So in Newfoundland, pharmacists do not have the authority to order blood work in a community pharmacy. In the hospital, some pharmacists do have that authority, but unfortunately we're not that far yet in communities. And it is really unfortunate because pharmacists are experts in medication therapy. So I know my patients very well, and I have access to their blood work, and I know what doses people need based on what their kidney function is. That's one of my main jobs, and we receive specialized training to know how to do that. But unfortunately, that is not allowed under our Pharmacy Act in Newfoundland and Labrador.
What did you say to this patient, Dr. O'Keefe? Like, sorry, you're going to have to wait, you're going to have to go to emergency here, you're going to have to leave Belle Island, go to emergency St. John's, you're going to have to come back. So
yeah,
what do you say to them?
So we help navigate our patients as best as we can, but I think a part of our role as pharmacists as well is educating our patients. This is something that we are able to do for them. It's just our government is not allowing us to do that. And it's very frustrating because, like I said, in provinces like Alberta, our pharmacist colleagues are already doing this, and they're making that those things much more efficient for the healthcare system there. And in a province like Newfoundland and Labrador, where we have so many people who don't have access to a family doctor, or who have long waiting times, or just where we have those big gaps in care, we have over 600 community pharmacies in Newfoundland and Labrador already. We're already in the small communities in our province, and we're trained to do these things. We just need to allow pharmacists to practice to their full scope.
All right, Dr. O'Keefe, appreciate your insight. Sounds like it's a possible area where we could gain some efficiencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, this province has sent 8 more firefighting personnel to northwestern Ontario, where forest fires continue to burn out of control. The crew includes 5 firefighters, 2 student firefighters, and an equipment and crew logistics coordinator. They will be part of a 17-person team from Atlantic Canada, and they are expected to stay in Ontario for 19 days. Warm, sunny day in St. John's. Beautiful afternoon. Ashley is off tonight. Some guy named Ryan Snodden. He's got your forecast right after the break.
Welcome back to Here and Now, everyone. Ryan Snodden here with you in the Weather Center in Halifax. Great to be here, pinch hitting for Ashley for tonight. And covering the Newfoundland and Labrador weather. Always a pleasure, and especially a pleasure when it's been such a great day today. Look at these highs today. Terra Nova 25, Gander at 22 was a pretty nice day across the island. A little cool and cloudy and unsettled across Labrador as this low spinning in the Labrador Sea has been, a little persistent today and a little slow to depart. But boy, we cleared out nicely, as you can see, across the island with that sunshine. Now, as we look forward, of course, always something coming down the pipeline, and that'll be the case as we work our way into tomorrow, at least with some increasing cloud cover. Though this precipitation working its way into the northeast parts of the U.S., that is going to be holding off until Friday night and, of course, into Saturday, just in time for the weekend. Now, Future Tracker timeline shows those chances for showers do continue through tonight, especially the north coast of Labrador. A fine night, though, across the island for tonight, and that will be really the name of the game as we work our way into tomorrow as well. Shower chances tomorrow morning for the north coast, and smooth sailing across southern parts of Labrador and across the island. Temperatures ranging from around 10 to 13 degrees. Again, the dampest spot will again be the north coast. Temperatures 8-9 degrees Nain down through Makovic. Labrador City also near 8 degrees to start. Now, as we watch the timeline for tomorrow, a couple of things to point out. One, we will see some pop-up showers developing across interior parts of Labrador. I think Happy Valley Goose Bay running the risk, Mealy Mountains, but I think we'll stay relatively dry along the coast of Labrador for tomorrow. Also across the island, southeasterly winds on the increase. Port aux Basques, Burgeo, likely seeing some gusts in that 50 kilometer per hour range for tomorrow. And there is a wreck house wind warning for tomorrow evening into the overnight, as gusts will likely approach 100 kilometers per hour in wreck house ahead of this approaching system. Now, for the most part, dry tomorrow, but no. A couple of pop-up showers, especially later afternoon into the evening for the Burin Peninsula, Harbour Breton, Burgeo, Ramia, and into the Port aux Basques area. So it did put a chance of showers there for you folks. The rest of the province, the rest of the island at least, looking very, very nice tomorrow. Temperatures ranging, from those pretty much into the low 20s, 20 to 23 degrees. Not much in the way of humidity. A really fine Friday shaping up as we roll our way into the long weekend. Shower chances, as we said, for Labrador tomorrow. Isolated, yes, but the risk is there, especially for the coast of Labrador. That'll be our best chances. Then for Saturday, you can see it's pretty cloudy, periods of showers and even some steadier pockets of rain in there. Not out of the question as we run through your timeline here. Saturday morning looks fairly wet. Perhaps some breaks as a bit of a dry punch works its way in on Saturday afternoon, so can't rule out some sun on Saturday across parts of the island, especially central towards eastern areas. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that. Looking forward into Sunday, again, a bit of an onshore flow here, and I think we will see the possibility of some showers lingering for western parts of the island, central and east looking drier. And then for Monday, some uncertainty as this next system starts to work its way in. I do have some showers for eastern parts of Newfoundland on Monday, but again, uncertainty remains with that forecast, so stay tuned for updates on that. Central Newfoundland, again, a chance of showers for Monday as well. Sunday, overall, is going to be the pick of the weekend across the island. Even though with those shower chances on the west coast on Sunday, it's going to be an isolated risk of showers. Chance of showers right through the forecast for eastern parts of Labrador and for western parts of Labrador. Shower chances in the mix right through the next few days. Hopefully we'll start to turn that temperature up a little bit as we work our way into August. That is your forecast now. Mr. Germain, back to you.
All right, thank you. Ryan Snodden in Halifax and the Weather Center there. He's actually getting pretty good at this. Okay, I want to clarify a story that we had for you on Tuesday about recycling. You can get a deposit back on refundable beverage containers in this province, but data shows about 1/3 of what's being sold is not being returned for the deposit. So that means those containers are likely going in the trash. Now, the MMSB gets around 2/3 back to recycle, but when we brought you this story earlier this week, I misspoke and said 2/3 were not returned. So I want to clarify that. Not as bad as saying a 90-year-old woman had 50 kids, but I'm learning. So 1/3 of recyclables go to the landfill, and that's shocking. The MMSB believes younger people are not recycling, and they're trying to find ways to encourage them to do so. Welcome back. CBC has learned that an advisory council is considering a request to remove former Governor General Julie Payette from the Order of Canada. Rideau Hall received a request to do so from a member of the public shortly after Payette resigned 6 months ago. That's after an external review found that Payette presided over a toxic workplace that prompted many employees to quit Rideau Hall. Payette, an engineer, scientist, and former astronaut, served as Governor General from 2017 until this past January. Since the Order of Canada was established back in 1967, only 7 people have been expelled. The CN Tower is facing stiff competition as the main attraction of the Toronto skyline. A massive hot air balloon will hover over the downtown area for the next few days, and it's in the shape of Vincent van Gogh, or is that Van Gogh? It's in the shape of his head.
Once I realized that it existed and that it had been flying every year for the last 10 years in Amsterdam, I knew we just had to have it here. It had never been to North America, had never been to Canada, and I just thought what a lot of fun it would be.
And he's got both ears, too. The balloon installation will spend time over the harbour front this weekend, and the initiative is meant to celebrate the reopening of an immense Van Gogh exhibit in Canada's largest city. Created in Europe, the balloon has been on display at many hot air balloon festivals around the world. That's pretty cool looking. Well, thanks a lot for spending part of your evening with us. It's Here and Now for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.